So I think the origins of American Studies, because I'm in programming American culture from the University of Michigan, which is basically an American Studies program. But one of the origins of American Studies was initially conquest, right? It was empire. It was to try to create a department or discipline or a body of knowledge that define the United States and American values, American ideals, those kinds of things, that could then be disseminated elsewhere, right? But gradually, I think, especially as a result of ethnic studies projects and student movements, you have a different kind of American studies developing. So when you go now to American Studies Association conferences, you can see, you can meet people like Angela Davis, and you can they have Black Panther caucuses, and those, you have a kind of memory of resistance and using the university as a way to kind of enter and kind of dismantle that kind of body of knowledge. So it feels like to me that American Studies is starting to develop a critique of empire. But what that critique of empire oftentimes misses is the issue of settler colonialism, the issue of genocide, the issue of the fact that the United States itself was established off of the deaths of Native Americans through the Northwest Ordinance, right? Expropriating different kinds of lands, establishing territories, then establishing states, right? So I think for myself, it's not to say that Hawaii is exceptional, but it is to say that there is an analysis that's coming out of Hawaii that's trying to look at the relationship between racial minorities and indigenous peoples and trying to not lose sight of that issue of settler colonization. And one of the things that I just kind of wanted to mention is that a lot of my dissertation is actually informed by the work of Andy Smith, who's a Native American scholar who's now at UC Riverside. She was at Michigan, but she wasn't able to get tenure. They argued that she wasn't, her academic scholarship wasn't rigorous enough, but I think all of us agreed that it was actually more based on her politics. She has this argument about the 3 pillars of white supremacy, right? And it's in an anthology called The Color of Violence. And she understands white supremacy as separate but interrelated logics. And she identifies 3 logics. One logic is labor exploitation, where certain racial groups are imagined as slaveable, right? So you can look at the history of African Americans, you can look at the history of Hawaii sugar plantations, you can look at Waikiki with the service industry. Certain groups are imagined as slaveable. Then you have another logic, which is settler colonization or genocide, right? Where the indigenous peoples must disappear so that others can lay claim over their land. And this is an issue that's addressed, was addressed by Patrick Wolf when he was here last week, and also in Asian Settler Colonialism in Hawaii, edited by Candice Fujikane and Jonathan Okamura. And then the last logic is Orientalism or war, right? Where the United States needs a perpetual foreign threat in order to be in a permanent state of war. And that logic is you can identify either the Japanese during World War II, communists, whatever. I mean, the United States has so many different boogeymen, right? So, or terrorists currently. So this allows the United States to be in a permanent state of war. And when you use Andy Smith, who is Native American, and you understand her 3 logics, you can apply it directly to Hawaii. And you can understand how the Japanese, the logics used in the early part of the 20th century, where the Japanese are going to invade Hawaii and then invade the West Coast, that justified the major military fortifications that took place here after the Russo-Japanese War and after the war with Japan and China. It's not to say that I think Hawaii is exceptional, but I think understanding white supremacy in that way allows us to have each community become accountable to the next community, because we can be simultaneously oppressed while also being oppressive, right? It's not the kind of previous formation of understandings of power and power relations as an oppressor and an oppressed. But I think when you kind of move out of that way, then you can get into kind of more issues of responsibility, because then you're not just white people oppress me, but I can understand and relate to other peoples in the ways in which we commonly oppress another group, right? And I think moving in that way actually gives us a certain kind of logic to understand history, but also to understand our present moment.
This series, it's a group project. I belong to HONI, which is an alternative media organization, and because it's 2009, we wanted to do, 1 show a month to talk about it, and we wanted originally to put it on channel 54, I think it's the non-Hawaiian channel, so that more people can understand the Hawaiian issues. We're just talking about so that people understand about statehood and to realize different perspectives and just how people sort of came to political consciousness. Different activists talk about that. That's
examples of people you're talking to?
Pardon?
Examples of...
Oh, I talked to Dean. I interviewed Dean. I interviewed Bumpy Kanahele and Andre Perez, two activists, well-known activists, and they, one thing they said to me that was really interesting is that they wanted to be able to get together when it's just Hawaiians to decide what they want. They said everything they've had, there's always been state or some kind of outside interest and interference, you know, and I just thought, yeah, that's right, everything. I had Kyle Kajihiro and Steve Tayama, who are both Japanese, who work in the Hawaiian community, and they do a lot of activism. So they talked about growing up Japanese and what it meant, like that. Yeah. I guess I don't know the point of the. Pardon?
Why is it important for people to hear this?
So that they will overthrow.
No, I mean, I know why, but...
Right.
Well, I don't get the question.
She's asking why you are archiving these.
Why am I doing it? Because they asked me to do it. That's why I'm doing it. And I think it's important to do it. This I can do. It's like what I'm saying. We can all do different things.
Yeah,
they asked me, can you do this? I was scared. I've never hosted a show, but okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because this I can do. I can't do other things. And if it can help build a bigger consciousness in society, yeah.
And I think it's also that we volunteer our time to do those kinds of things on Olelo, you more than everyone else, but we're not getting paid like the same way the people who are sitting on the Hawaii Statehood Commission and from the, you know, on that level, they actually had money that was appropriated for that specific purpose. We don't have the Honolulu Star Bulletin or that advertiser or, you know, KGMB or etc. We don't have the media to express the counterpoint. So we have to rely on, and thank God we have Olelo to actually have a space to have these conversations and to have those dialogues. And for Keala's film, right, those kinds of things. And I think one of the things that's important about that is Kamakila's work in the 1940s and the 1950s, we have that now. We can point to the fact that there was a counter-opinion. There was someone who was speaking to the inequalities between the Hawaii Statehood Commission having $500,000 to run advertisement, to run a campaign, to have somebody in Washington, D.C. lobbying congressmen for statehood. But none of that money was expropriated for anyone who was in opposition to statehood, right? So I think understanding the ways in which certain messages are able to become circulated and disseminated versus other messages that don't have economic profit at the bottom line, I think to me that's one of the important things that I think your show is doing.
Kula